You raised them, loved them through sleepless nights and endless worry, gave everything you had and sometimes more than you had. You sacrificed in ways no one saw, carried burdens no one knew about, and through it all, you believed that love would be enough. And now there's silence. A door closed, a phone that never rings, a space where your child used to be. This is a pain that most people will never understand unless they've lived it. The rejection doesn't just hurt, it makes you question everything: your worth, your choices, your entire identity as a parent. But here's what no one tells you about this kind of pain. It doesn't just break you, it can also remake you. Inside the worst rejection a parent can face lies a strength you never knew you possessed. Not despite the pain, but forged directly through it. This isn't about blame. Not yours, not theirs. This is about finding a way forward when the path you expected disappeared completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest teachers. Today, I'm going to share 7 hidden strengths that emerge when your child rejects you, strengths you didn't know you had until this moment forced you to find them. Number 5 is the one that changes everything: the realization that your worth was never theirs to define. By the end, you won't just survive this. You'll understand how to carry this weight without letting it crush who you are. If you're carrying this silent pain that few people understand, stay with me. 1. The strength to love without control. The hardest lesson any parent learns is this: you can give someone life, but you cannot control how they live it. Your child's rejection forces you to finally understand this truth in the most painful way possible. You've probably spent years believing something that felt completely true. If you loved enough, if you sacrificed enough, if you did everything right, or at least close enough to right, the outcome would follow. Your child would love you back, your relationship would remain intact, the bond would survive anything. But love doesn't work like that. And control was always an illusion. What feels like the ultimate loss is actually the painful birth of a different kind of love. One that doesn't depend on proximity, on approval, on getting anything in return. A love that exists simply because it exists, independent of response, independent of outcome. There was a woman named Margaret who spent 3 years trying to understand why her daughter stopped speaking to her. She replayed every conversation in her mind, analyzed every decision she'd ever made, tortured herself with questions that had no answers. What did I do wrong? What could I have said differently? Why wasn't my love enough? She kept reaching out. Calls that went to voicemail, texts that were never answered, letters she wasn't sure were ever read. Nothing worked. The silence continued. Then one morning, something shifted inside Margaret. She realized her love for her daughter didn't require her daughter's presence to exist. She could love her from a distance. She could wish her well without being part of her life. She could release the desperate need to control the outcome while still holding the love in her heart. It wasn't giving up. It was letting go of what was never hers to control in the first place. Here's what this experience teaches you: something you couldn't have learned any other way. Real love isn't transactional. It doesn't require reciprocation to be valid. It doesn't need acknowledgement to exist. When you learn to love without controlling, without demanding a specific response, you discover a freedom you never knew was possible. This doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means the pain no longer owns you. Epictetus taught, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." Your child's choices, no matter how much they hurt, are not within your power. Your love, your peace, your response to this situation, those remain completely yours. The Stoics understood that freedom comes not from controlling outcomes, but from releasing attachment to outcomes we never controlled in the first place. You've probably been fighting this truth, trying to change what cannot be changed, reaching for what keeps pulling away. Most parents in your situation have allow yourself to love without expecting anything in return. This isn't weakness, it's the highest form of strength a parent can develop. Your love exists independently of their response. That love still matters. It still means something, even if they never see it, even if they never acknowledge it. Learning to love without control is the first hidden strength. But the next one goes even deeper, discovering who you are when your most important role is suddenly taken away. 2. The strength to rediscover your identity. For years, maybe decades, parent was your primary identity. It shaped everything: how you spent your time, how you made decisions, how you saw yourself in the world. And now that role has been rejected, which leaves you facing a terrifying question. Who am I if I'm not needed by my child? You've probably felt this emptiness without being able to name it. The house feels different. The routines feel meaningless. You look in the mirror and aren't sure who's looking back. Everything you built your life around seems to have crumbled, and you're left standing in the rubble wondering what's left. This forced rediscovery is painful. There's no way around that. But it's also an opportunity that most people never get. When the identity you built your life around is stripped away, you have the rare chance to find out who you truly are beneath it. Not just a parent, a complete human being with dreams that got postponed, needs that got ignored. A life that matters independently of any role you play for anyone else. I watched a man named Richard struggle with this for nearly 2 years. His son had been his entire world, coaching Little League, helping with homework every night, planning for college together. It wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. When his son cut contact after a painful disagreement, Richard didn't just lose his son, he lost himself. He wandered through days not knowing what to do with his hands, his time, his thoughts. The emptiness was overwhelming. He'd look at other fathers with their children and feel like a ghost watching the living. But slowly, painfully, reluctantly, Richard began to rediscover parts of himself he'd completely forgotten existed. Interests he'd abandoned when fatherhood consumed everything. Friendships he'd let fade. Dreams he'd put on permanent hold without ever making a conscious decision to do so. He started painting again. Something he'd loved in his 20s but hadn't touched in over 2 decades. It didn't replace his son. Nothing could do that. But it reminded him that he existed before fatherhood. And he could continue existing now. Richard never stopped being a father in his heart. But he discovered he was also more than a father. He was a complete person who had value beyond any single role, even the most important one. Here's the hidden strength in this pain. When you're forced to find yourself beyond parenthood, you often discover a more complete version of who you are. You realize that your worth was never dependent on being needed. You existed before this role began, and you continue to exist now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Dig within. Within is the wellspring of good, and it is always ready to bubble up if you just dig." Your identity doesn't depend on external validation, not even from your children. The source of who you are lies within, waiting to be rediscovered. Begin exploring who you are beyond parenthood. What did you love before? What dreams did you set aside? What parts of yourself have been waiting patiently for your attention all these years? If you're rediscovering who you are beyond the role of parent, type "I am more than this pain" below to remind yourself and others walking this path that your identity was never defined by one relationship alone. Rediscovering your identity takes courage. But the next strength requires something even harder: accepting what you cannot change. 3. The strength to accept what you cannot change. You've probably spent countless hours trying to fix this, replaying conversations in your mind, planning exactly what you'll say if they ever reach out, hoping that something, anything you do, will finally change everything and bring them back. But some things cannot be fixed, only accepted. And acceptance might be the hardest thing you'll ever do. You've felt this exhausting cycle before. The constant hoping, the endless analyzing, waking up each morning wondering if today might be different, going to sleep each night with the same disappointment weighing on your chest. Your entire life has become organized around waiting for something that may never come. That's not living. That's pausing indefinitely. Acceptance is not giving up. It's not agreeing that this situation is right or fair or what you deserved. It's simply acknowledging what is without torturing yourself by constantly fighting a reality you cannot change. This acceptance is one of the hardest things a human being can do, and it's also one of the most powerful, because until you accept what is, you cannot begin to build what could be. There was a woman named Catherine who fought reality for 5 years. Her daughter had stopped speaking to her after a disagreement that escalated beyond what either of them expected. Every single day, Catherine woke up believing today might be the day everything changed. Every single night, she went to sleep, exhausted from hoping. She couldn't move forward because she was always looking backward, waiting, hoping, refusing to accept that this was her life now. Then, one morning, something broke open inside her. Not hope, hope remained. But the desperate grip on an outcome she couldn't control finally loosened. Catherine didn't give up on her daughter. She gave up on fighting reality. She accepted that her daughter had made a choice. That choice caused enormous pain, and that pain was real. But so was Catherine's life happening right now, every single day, while she stood frozen, waiting for something that might never come. She learned to hold space for hope while living fully in the present. To accept what she couldn't change while remaining genuinely open to change if it ever came. The door stayed open, but Catherine was no longer trapped in the doorway. Here's why acceptance is strength and not weakness. Fighting reality is exhausting. It drains energy that could be spent living, healing, growing, finding moments of peace. When you finally accept what is, you stop depleting yourself in a battle you cannot win. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means freedom from the constant, crushing struggle against something outside your control. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then, your life will flow well." The Stoics practiced acceptance not as defeat, but as the foundation for genuine peace. You cannot build a new life while constantly at war with the one you have. Practice accepting this moment exactly as it is, not as you desperately wish it were, not as you're hoping to make it, just as it is, right now. It means stopping the exhausting war against reality. Acceptance brings peace. But the next strength might surprise you. It's the ability to find meaning inside the suffering itself. 4. Suffering without meaning is unbearable. It crushes you slowly. But suffering that teaches something, that transforms you, that serves something larger than the pain itself, that kind of suffering can be carried. This pain you're feeling can become your teacher if you let it. The question isn't whether you'll suffer. You already are. The question is whether that suffering will mean something, Will it make you bitter and closed off from the world? Or will it make you wiser and more compassionate? You didn't choose this pain, but you can choose what you do with it. And that choice determines whether this experience destroys you or transforms you into someone you never knew you could become. I knew a man named William, whose story has stayed with me for years. His son had rejected him completely. No contact for 7 years. No calls on birthdays. No response to letters. Just silence where a relationship used to be. The pain was enormous some days. William wasn't sure he could continue carrying it. But William made a choice that changed everything. He decided his suffering would mean something beyond just his own grief. He started volunteering at a community center with young men who had no father figures in their lives. Teenagers who were angry, lost, hungry for guidance they'd never received. William couldn't be present for his own son, but he could be present for someone else's child who desperately needed what he had to offer. He didn't replace his son. Nothing could ever do that. The ache remained, but William transformed his pain into purpose. The love he couldn't give to his own child, he poured into children who had never experienced that kind of steady, patient presence. William's wound never fully healed, but it became a source of deep compassion that changed other lives, and in doing so, changed his own. His suffering became meaningful because he made it meaningful. Here's the hidden strength that emerges from pain. Suffering can either make you smaller or larger as a human being. It can close you off from the world or open you to understanding you never had before. The difference lies entirely in whether you find meaning in it. When you give your suffering a purpose, you transform it from something that simply happens to you into something you carry with intention. The weight remains, but it becomes a weight that builds strength instead of crushing spirit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way. Your greatest obstacle can become your greatest teacher. The rejection you're facing can become the source of your deepest growth if you allow it to teach you instead of just wound you." Ask yourself honestly, what can this pain teach me? How might this experience, as brutal as it is, serve something larger than my own grief? The answer might not come today, but holding the question opens doors that pure suffering keeps locked forever. If you're learning to transform your pain into purpose instead of letting it crush you, hit subscribe. We're healing together. Finding meaning transforms suffering. But the next strength is perhaps the most important one of all, realizing that your worth was never theirs to define. 5. The strength to know your worth isn't defined by their acceptance. This is the realization that changes everything. Your worth as a person, your value, your lovability, your right to exist and be happy was never in your child's hands. It was never theirs to give. And it was never theirs to take away. When your child rejects you, it's natural to question everything about yourself. Am I a good person? Did I fail completely? Am I even worthy of love? Their rejection feels like the ultimate verdict on your value as a human being. The jury has spoken, and the verdict is guilty. But here's the truth you need to hear, really hear. Your worth existed before you became a parent. It exists completely outside of your relationship with your child. It cannot be taken away by anyone's opinion of you, not even the opinion of someone you love more than you love yourself. There was a woman named Eleanor who let her daughter's rejection define her for years. Every morning she woke up feeling fundamentally worthless. If her own child didn't want her, who possibly would? She must be unlovable at her core. Something must be deeply, irreparably wrong with her as a human being. This belief poisoned everything in her life. Her other relationships suffered because she felt undeserving of connection. Her work declined because she couldn't concentrate through the shame. Her ability to find any moment of joy disappeared completely. She was alive, but she wasn't really living. Then one day, a simple question from an old friend shifted everything. "Eleanor, if your best friend's child rejected her, would you think she was worthless?" Of course not, Eleanor realized immediately. She would never judge someone else that harshly. She would see her friend as a complete person who was suffering, not as someone whose entire value was determined by one relationship. So why was she judging herself by a standard she would never in a million years apply to anyone else? Eleanor began the slow, difficult work of separating her worth from her daughter's acceptance. She was a person who had loved imperfectly, like every parent who ever lived. She had made mistakes like every human being, and she had also done countless things right that her pain had made her completely forget. Her daughter's choice reflected her daughter's journey. It wasn't a verdict on Eleanor's value as a human being. Here's the truth most parents in your situation need to understand. Your child's rejection is about their path, their pain, their choices, their interpretation of the past. It may have very little to do with your actual worth, and even if you made real mistakes, mistakes don't define your entire value as a person. No one, not even your own child, has the authority to determine what you're worth. That authority belongs only to you. Epictetus taught, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." Your child's rejection is a fact, but the judgment that it makes you worthless, that's a story you're telling yourself, and you have the power to tell a different story. Separate their choice from your worth. Would you tell another parent in your exact situation that they're worthless? Then don't tell yourself that either. Knowing your worth is transformative. But the next strength takes this further, the ability to live fully even while carrying this grief. 6. The strength to live fully while grieving. You don't have to choose between grieving your child and living your life. You can do both. You can carry this sorrow in your heart and still find moments of genuine joy. That's not betrayal of your love, that's strength. Many people believe they have to choose, and neither does real love. You can miss your child every single day and still laugh with friends. You can carry deep sadness and still notice the beauty in a sunset. You can grieve what you've lost and still embrace fully what remains. These aren't contradictions. They're both part of being completely human. You've probably felt guilty whenever happiness tried to sneak through. How can I enjoy anything when my child is gone from my life? How can I laugh when my heart is broken? What kind of parent feels joy while their relationship with their child lies in pieces? But here's what guilt doesn't want you to understand. Your suffering doesn't help your child. Your misery doesn't bring them closer. Refusing every moment of happiness doesn't honor anyone. It just adds more pain to a situation already overflowing with it. I watched a woman named Patricia navigate this impossible balance with more grace than she knew she had. Her daughter hadn't spoken to her in 4 years. The grief was constant, a weight Patricia carried everywhere she went, into every room, through every day. For a long time, she felt deeply guilty whenever she experienced even a moment of happiness. If she laughed at something, the guilt arrived immediately. If she enjoyed a meal with friends, she felt like a traitor. If she found herself having a good day, she would remind herself of the pain, as if happiness was somehow a betrayal of her love. Then Patricia realized something that shifted everything. Her constant suffering didn't help her daughter at all. Her refusal to experience joy didn't make reconnection more likely. Her misery served no one, not her daughter, not herself, not anyone who loved her. Patricia learned to hold both truths at the same time. She missed her daughter deeply, and she could still live a meaningful, even joyful life. These weren't opposites fighting each other. They were both part of her complete human experience. She stopped waiting for the grief to end before giving herself permission to live. She carried the grief and lived anyway. Some days the grief was heavier. Some days life felt lighter. Both were allowed. Both were real. Here's the strength most people don't realize they possess. You can carry enormous grief without being completely crushed by it. You can honor what you've lost while still honoring what remains. You can hold sadness in one hand and gratitude in the other. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Much of our suffering comes from believing we must be only one thing, only sad, only grieving, only broken. But you're allowed to be broken and whole at the same time. Human beings are big enough to contain both. Give yourself permission to experience joy without guilt. You honor your child by living fully, not by suffering endlessly. Living fully while grieving is possible. But the final strength is the one that holds everything together, hope that doesn't trap you. 7. The strength to hold hope without attachment. You can keep the door open without standing at it forever. You can hold hope for reconciliation without letting that hope control your entire life. This is the final strength, and maybe the most delicate one to master. Hope is essential. It keeps part of your heart open for the reconnection that may someday come. Without hope, something inside you dies. But hope that becomes obsession is a different thing entirely. It traps you. It keeps you waiting instead of living. It makes your entire existence conditional on something you cannot control. The strength is learning to hope without attachment. To leave the door open while walking away from it. To be genuinely ready for reconnection while building a life that doesn't require it to be complete. You've probably lived in that doorway for too long already. Every time the phone rings, your heart jumps, maybe today. Every holiday, you leave an empty space at the table just in case. Every morning you wake up wondering if this will be the day everything changes. Your whole life has become organized around waiting, but waiting isn't living. And your child wouldn't want you frozen in time, even if they can't tell you that right now. There was a man named George who struggled with this balance for years. His daughter had cut contact after a painful misunderstanding that spiraled beyond what either of them intended. George loved her desperately. He wanted nothing more than to hear her voice again, to hold her, to tell her how sorry he was for whatever part he played. So he waited. Every day. For years. He kept his phone charged and nearby at all times. What if she called? He avoided traveling. What if she showed up? He put his entire life on pause. What if today was the day? But the day never came. And George slowly realized he wasn't living. He was just waiting to live. George learned to shift his relationship with hope. He still loved his daughter fiercely, still wished for reconciliation with every part of his heart, still kept the door wide open. But he stopped standing in that doorway every moment of every day, unable to move. He learned to hold hope loosely, like something precious that he treasured but couldn't control. The door remained open. But George was no longer trapped inside it. If his daughter ever returned, he would welcome her with open arms. If she didn't, he would still have lived a full and meaningful life while the door stayed open. Here's the final strength. Hope and detachment can coexist. You can wish for something with your whole heart while not requiring it for your peace. You can leave space for reconciliation while filling your life with meaning and purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, and do so with all your heart. Accept what is. Love without condition. And live fully, not someday when things might change, but right now, exactly as things are." Keep the door open, but don't live in the doorway. Your life is happening now, and it deserves your full presence. 7 hidden strengths that emerge when your child rejects you. The strength to love without control, to rediscover who you are, to accept what you cannot change, to find meaning in suffering, to know your worth isn't defined by their acceptance, to live fully while grieving, and to hold hope without being trapped by it. If any of this spoke to your heart, subscribe. We're walking this path together. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "This pain you carry is real. The weight is heavy, but within that weight lies strength. You never knew you had strength that only this experience could reveal. You are more than this loss. The door can stay open,